I'm connected to Jamethia like no other way. I have her name tattooed on my right arm.
You are the father of your ex-fiancee, Miss Hatton's 13-month-old daughter. Certain Miss Hatton has been deceiving you for over 2 years, and your biggest fear is that today you will walk out of this court without a daughter. Miss Hatton, you are positive Mr. Avant is Jamethia's father and are hoping the DNA results will piece your family back together.
Your Honor, me and Miss Hatton was engaged to get married. We eventually called it off. Jamethia's life since she's been born. I started hearing stuff that it may not be mine. It's a possibility it could be somebody else's. True. And I've heard this personally from her family. I was told that it was a possibility that she might have had sex with somebody else. She was talking to her ex and telling him that they was gonna be together. She loved him. She's talking to her ex and he is thinking that the baby is his.
When the truth walks into a courtroom, hearts break, lives change, and justice demands a voice. In Judge Lauren Lake's world, the search for truth isn't just about DNA, it's about redemption, evidence, and the fragile relationship between law and justice. The courtroom is not just a place of verdicts, it's a stage where emotions collide with legal principles. Judge Lauren Lake, known for her balance of empathy and authority, stands as the bridge between pain and resolution. Every DNA test that arrives on her bench carries not just genetic evidence, but stories of love, betrayal, and the fragile threads that hold families together. In this realm, people regret taking DNA tests not because they fear the truth, but because the truth changes everything. In this case, two families find themselves entangled in questions no one is ever truly ready to ask. On one side, a man fights to remain in a little girl's life, despite doubts that haunt him. On the other, a woman clings to hope that science will restore what love has lost. Judge Lauren Lake's paternity court becomes the silent witness to a modern human tragedy, a reflection of how evidence, emotion, and ethics intertwine. The DNA test doesn't merely confirm paternity, it challenges faith, loyalty, and perception. As in the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, where legal experts discuss how justice often walks a tightrope between fact and feeling, this story embodies that same tension. Here, the courtroom becomes a living classroom of jurisprudence, where Judge Lake teaches the world that justice isn't about punishment. It's about truth and healing. Every piece of evidence presented becomes a fragment of the larger story. A birth certificate with a man's name, a calendar of conception dates, a set of text messages. Each detail becomes a clue, but beyond legal procedure lies something deeper, the adverse inference drawn when silence replaces honesty. Under the Evidence Act, when truth is withheld, justice learns to speak through what's missing. Judge Lauren Lake uses these moments not just to rule, but to educate, to show that evidence is not only what is presented, but what is deliberately hidden. As the divorce case unfolds alongside the paternity battle, another theme emerges, the relationship between law and justice. Law is written, codified, and unbending. Justice, however, breathes, feels, and forgives. In The Truth Changes. Everything podcast. Stories like these are reminders that justice doesn't always wear a robe. It lives in the choices people make when no one is watching. Judge Lake becomes the mediator of both, interpreting law with compassion and enforcing justice with reason. Behind every DNA test is a story of regret, not because truth is cruel, but because it forces reflection. People regret taking DNA tests when the result shatters the world they've built. It's a painful irony. The search for truth often destroys comfort. Yet Judge Lake reminds them and all watching that truth may hurt, but it heals stronger than lies ever could. Her courtroom mirrors the confessional space of Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where people confront their mistakes to reclaim their peace. Here, too, there are testimonies not from addiction, but from heartbreak. A father's voice cracks as he speaks about the little girl he might lose. A mother trembles under the weight of her decisions. The DNA test becomes their stage of recovery, and Judge Lake becomes their guide. Like in the Divorce Course podcast, this isn't just law, it's therapy wrapped in legal robes. As the evidence unfolds, Timelines blur. Conception dates, conflicting due dates, medical records, all are laid before the court. Yet truth, as Judge Lake often teaches, is not found in paperwork, but in consistency. When stories change, when words shift to protect emotions, truth demands attention. The concept of justice in jurisprudence finds its heart here, not in rigid legality, but in compassionate reasoning. Justice, as seen through Judge Lake's eyes, is not about winning or losing. It's about understanding. One of the most compelling aspects of this courtroom drama is how it exposes the psychology of deception. Why do people lie about paternity, love, and commitment? The reasons range from fear to desperation to self-preservation. In some ways, they mirror adoption stories, where the truth about identity can either liberate or devastate. In both, the question remains the same. Is knowing always better than not knowing? Judge Lake's courtroom, much like a Supreme Court in miniature, wrestles with these questions daily. The authority of the bench, the sanctity of the oath, the presentation of evidence, and the gravity of her words all echo the higher calling of justice itself. Each full episode becomes a philosophical essay on truth and humanity, teaching that every case is more than legal, it's moral. When the DNA results are read, silence falls. The words "you are not the father" carry a finality that reshapes lives. The man who once tattooed his daughter's name on his arm now faces the unthinkable. She is not biologically his. In that moment, Judge Lauren Lake doesn't just deliver results. She delivers grace. She allows space for grief, a sacred pause between knowledge and acceptance. It's a moment where the law steps back and justice steps forward. Her courtroom isn't just a setting for judgment, it's a living demonstration of how law and empathy coexist. The relationship between law and justice isn't a contradiction, it's a collaboration. Law provides the structure, justice provides the soul. Judge Lake stands precisely where those two meet, embodying the belief that truth changes everything, but only compassion can rebuild what truth breaks. This is why her courtroom resonates beyond television screens. It's more than entertainment. It's an exploration of human complexity. Every cheating story, every confession, every plea for forgiveness becomes a chapter in the ongoing dialogue between justice and humanity. The evidence stage is not just a procedural formality. It's where human stories find their voice under oath. The adverse inference doctrine teaches that when someone refuses to speak, the silence itself becomes evidence. Judge Lake often invokes this principle, reminding litigants that honesty isn't optional, it's foundational. When you hold back the truth, she says, the truth still speaks through what you don't say. These words have become iconic among fans of the Divorce Course podcast, where legal psychology and emotional accountability intersect. The courtroom, under her guidance, becomes a sanctuary for truth seekers. It's not about humiliation or exposure, it's about resolution. In one case, a father learns that love doesn't require biology. In another, a mother confronts the weight of her choices. Both leave with answers, but more importantly, with understanding. It's this pursuit of emotional justice that separates Judge Lake's court from traditional legal shows. In many ways, her courtroom mirrors the philosophy discussed in the Game-Changing Attorney podcast, that real justice isn't just about applying law, but transforming lives. Attorneys, judges, and families alike find themselves questioning their assumptions about fairness and truth. The jurisprudence of compassion becomes a defining theme. Even child support cases take on a deeper meaning under her leadership. They are not merely about financial obligation, but about moral responsibility, the acknowledgement that parenting extends beyond DNA. This philosophy aligns with the ethos of Celebrate Recovery, where accountability is not punishment but healing. Every episode becomes a sermon of second chances. Judge Lauren Lake's brilliance lies in her ability to merge intellect with empathy. She doesn't merely interpret law, she humanizes it. Her court is both a classroom and a confessional, where people confront their past to reclaim their future. The emotional weight of her cases rivals the moral dilemmas of the Supreme Court, yet her approach remains deeply personal. In this unfolding story, truth isn't a weapon. it's a cure. The families who walk into her courtroom come seeking closure, but leave with something far greater: clarity. The DNA test may confirm facts, but the concept of justice in jurisprudence confirms humanity. The courtroom becomes a sacred space where science meets conscience, where Judge Lake's verdicts echo far beyond the gavel's sound. And in this moment, between evidence and empathy, between the law and the heart, justice finally breathes. The sound of the gavel fades, but the echo of truth remains. In Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom, every case becomes a mirror, reflecting not only the complexities of law, but the raw vulnerability of human emotion. What unfolds before her is not merely a legal proceeding. It is a search for identity, belonging, and the deeper meaning of justice. The aftermath of a DNA test result is never simple. When a man hears the words, "You are not the father," time stands still. It's a moment of emotional disorientation, where biology erases years of love, effort, and sacrifice. Judge Lauren Lake, however, understands that legal truth and emotional truth do not always align. The relationship between law and justice is often a fragile bridge, one built not on cold statutes, but on the recognition that every human being standing before her carries a lifetime of untold pain. That is why she listens, not only as a judge, but as a guide through the emotional wreckage that follows the revelation. She has seen it all. People regret taking DNA tests, not because they wanted to hide the truth, but because the truth can burn away the illusions that once held them together. And yet, even in that pain, there is liberation. Her courtroom feels like a place where law meets the spirit of the Truth Changes Everything podcast. A space where truth isn't feared, but honored. The power of evidence, when coupled with empathy, becomes transformational. In one moment, Judge Lake stands as an interpreter of evidence, evaluating medical reports, timelines, and testimonies. In the next, she stands as a guardian of humanity, acknowledging tears, remorse, and fragile hopes. It's in this balance that her courtroom transcends television drama. It becomes a microcosm of real life, where truth is neither kind nor cruel. It's simply necessary. The evidence stage in divorce cases further amplifies this dynamic. Here, spouses bring their private world into public view, often revealing wounds that have festered for years. Betrayal, financial secrecy, and emotional neglect are dissected under the bright courtroom lights. But Judge Lauren Lake's brilliance lies in how she reframes pain as progress. The purpose of evidence, she reminds litigants, is not to destroy, but to reveal. Her rulings often echo the spirit of the Game Changing Attorney podcast, where legal visionaries discuss how justice requires both courage and clarity. For Judge Lake, courage lies not in confrontation, but in confession. Each time a person admits the truth about infidelity, doubt, or fear, they reclaim a part of their dignity. The concept of justice in jurisprudence, as she lives it, is not simply about verdicts, but about transformation. In her view, law is the skeleton, and justice is the heartbeat. Without compassion, law becomes machinery. Without structure, compassion becomes chaos. And so, she operates where both must coexist, where jurisprudence meets mercy, and where truth changes everything. Throughout her years on the bench, Judge Lake has witnessed countless cheating stories, each unique, yet hauntingly familiar. The details differ, but the core remains the same. Love tainted by deception, faith eroded by secrets. Some lie to protect others, some lie to protect themselves. Yet, when the DNA envelope is opened, lies dissolve. The science doesn't judge, it simply declares. And in that declaration, the moral lesson becomes clear. Deception delays pain, but never avoids it. She often reminds her courtroom and her millions of viewers that truth is evidence, and evidence is liberation. The process of uncovering it may be brutal, but what emerges afterward is freedom. It's the same message echoed in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, where people find peace not by denying their past, but by confronting it. That confrontation, however, can be brutal. For some, like the men who discover they are not fathers, the truth feels like betrayal from both fate and love. For others, like women who hid the truth out of fear or shame, the courtroom becomes a place of reluctant surrender. And yet, Judge Lake transforms each of these revelations into a lesson, not of failure, but of accountability. This, she believes, is the very essence of justice, not to condemn, but to restore. In her courtroom, the law is not a weapon. It is a mirror reflecting who we've become and who we could be if we chose honesty over illusion. Her influence stretches beyond her show. Discussions on podcasts like the Divorce Course podcast often cite her approach as a model for legal and emotional balance. She doesn't only interpret the law, she humanizes it. She reminds both litigants and the audience that the purpose of justice is not punishment, but reconciliation. Reconciliation with oneself, with truth, and with life after heartbreak. In one memorable statement, she said, "Law tells us what we must do. Justice tells us why we must do it." That why is where her impact truly lies. In the deeper philosophical sense, her courtroom embodies the concept of justice in jurisprudence. Classic jurisprudence sees justice as an ideal, an abstract virtue pursued through the mechanisms of law, but Judge Lake redefines it for a modern world. Justice not as a distant ideal, but as a living experience, born through truth-telling and personal accountability. Each adoption story, each custody dispute, each case of mistaken paternity becomes an exploration of what it means to belong. Adoption, in particular, mirrors the emotional landscape of paternity cases. Both revolve around identity, belonging, and unconditional love. Whether a child is bound by blood or by choice, Judge Lake insists that love is the truest evidence of family. This belief echoes the compassion found in Celebrate Recovery testimonies, that healing begins where truth is spoken without fear. Her courtroom, though formal and procedural, carries a sense of redemption that feels almost spiritual. The oath taken before testimony is not just a legal ritual. It's a sacred promise to face oneself. Every full episode of her court becomes a testimony in itself, a reflection of modern society's tangled relationship with truth. From the moment litigants take the stand, the courtroom transforms into a sacred space of revelation. Here, silence is not safety, it is adverse inference. Under the Evidence Act, silence can imply guilt. Under Judge Lake's moral code, silence implies pain, a sign that someone fears truth more than consequence. And yet, it is in that fear that growth begins. She does not punish fear, she dismantles it. Her patience and firmness teach that vulnerability is not weakness. It's the first step toward clarity. When a man trembles while admitting his doubts, she doesn't shame him. When a woman cries while revealing infidelity, she doesn't scold. She listens. Because listening, in her courtroom, is a form of justice too. Her methods are often discussed in legal circles as the embodiment of restorative jurisprudence, a form of justice that seeks not just to decide, but to heal. It's the same principle that guides recovery programs and spiritual testimonies. Every case before her becomes an opportunity for restoration, a family broken by secrets, a parent torn between love and truth, a partner learning to forgive. And when she finally reads the DNA test results, it's not just a ruling, it's revelation. The silence that follows carries more weight than any argument. The truth, once hidden, now stands unopposed. In that silence, Judge Lake allows the participants to feel, fully, deeply, without interruption. Some weep, some stand still, some look down in disbelief, and some, miraculously, smile through the pain, grateful that uncertainty has finally ended. Because truth, even when it hurts, is a form of peace. The man who discovers he is not the father may leave broken, but he leaves knowing. The woman who deceived may lose love, but she regains integrity. The child, though unaware, gains the foundation of truth, a seed that will grow into understanding. This is the unseen beauty of Judge Lake's courtroom. It's not just the law that wins, it's the human spirit. In one case, Judge Lake's words pierced the silence like a prayer. DNA doesn't make you a father. Commitment does. Those words have echoed across social media, podcasts, and university law classes alike. They summarize her philosophy that justice is not found in paperwork or statutes, but in the choices we make to love, even when we're hurt. She teaches that the relationship between law and justice must be dynamic. Law must evolve with human complexity. Justice must adapt with compassion. In this way, her court becomes both classroom and sanctuary, a place where the broken learn that being wrong is not the end, and where truth, though painful, is the first step toward peace. Her courtroom aligns closely with discussions found in the Game Changing Attorney podcast, where the legal profession's greatest minds explore how empathy can redefine advocacy. For Judge Lake, empathy is not leniency, it is accuracy. It ensures that judgments don't just end cases, they heal people. Even when dealing with complex child support disputes, she reminds parents that the law cannot teach love. Only accountability can. Support, she says, is not just money, it's presence. It's consistency. It's the willingness to do right, even when it's inconvenient. Her rulings often include more than legal outcomes. They include life lessons. For some, they are lessons in truth. For others, lessons in forgiveness. But for everyone, they are lessons in justice. As viewers watch her navigate tears, tension, and truth, they often find their own reflections in her courtroom. That's the power of storytelling through justice. It speaks to everyone. People tune in not just to witness verdicts, but to witness recovery. Her court, in essence, is a stage for redemption. Much like the testimonies shared in Celebrate Recovery, it reminds us that truth is never too late. People can change, heal, and rebuild, but only the heart of every courtroom beats to a rhythm of contradictions. Law versus love, logic versus emotion, evidence versus belief. And in Judge Lauren Lake's courtroom, those contradictions aren't hidden behind legal language. They're lived, raw, and unfiltered. Her bench becomes a place where truth is both a sword and a sanctuary. Every DNA test, every piece of evidence, every tear shed under oath forms part of a collective truth. That justice, no matter how delayed or painful, always arrives. Judge Lake's approach is unique because she sees beyond the paperwork. She knows that every divorce case, every adoption story, every DNA result represents a lifetime of hopes and heartbreaks. What looks like a legal dispute on paper is often an emotional reckoning in disguise. For her, the relationship between law and justice is not academic. It's human. Law may define the rules, but justice defines the outcome that hearts can live with. This philosophy echoes throughout modern legal discourse, and even in the reflections shared on the Game Changing Attorney podcast, where professionals dissect the psychology of advocacy. Like those thought leaders, Judge Lake demonstrates that an attorney, or in her case, a judge, isn't simply an enforcer of law, but a storyteller of truth. Her courtroom becomes a living podcast of testimony, where every case becomes an episode in humanity's long dialogue with morality. In one case, a man enters her courtroom holding on to hope and leaves holding only truth. He once tattooed a little girl's name on his arm, believing love could rewrite biology. But when the DNA test results proved otherwise, Judge Lake didn't let the moment dissolve into despair. Instead, she reframed it. Love doesn't end when truth begins, she said softly. It just changes form. Those words, simple yet profound, have resonated beyond her courtroom. They capture the essence of the Truth Changes Everything podcast. That the revelation of truth, though painful, liberates us from living in the shadows of denial. The man may have lost a daughter by genetics, but through compassion and honesty, he gained the integrity to face the world again without lies. This, Judge Lake believes, is where justice finds its real meaning, not in punishment, but in the healing that follows clarity. Her philosophy of jurisprudence is grounded not in rigidity, but in humanity. Classical philosophers like Aristotle defined justice as giving each their due. Judge Lake extends that to emotional dues as well. She ensures that no one leaves her courtroom without being seen, heard, and acknowledged. Even when she must render hard verdicts, she does so with empathy, reminding all that truth without compassion is cruelty. The adverse inference doctrine often plays a silent role in her reasoning. When a witness hesitates, when evidence is withheld, she looks beyond silence. In the Evidence Act, the failure to produce evidence implies guilt or concealment. But in Judge Lake's world, silence often implies pain, a wound unhealed, or a truth too heavy to bear. Her role, then, is not just to interpret law, but to interpret silence. In a society where cheating stories, divorce battles, and custody disputes dominate conversations, her courtroom provides something rare: moral clarity. The Celebrate Recovery testimonies that unfold within her cases are not religious in tone, but redemptive in spirit. They show that no matter how deep the deception or how painful the truth, recovery begins the moment honesty enters the room. When people break down before her bench, confessing betrayal, doubt, or deceit, Judge Lake never ridicules. She restores dignity through accountability. In one episode, a woman confessed to lying about the paternity of her child out of fear of losing her fiancé. The judge's response wasn't condemnation, it was instruction. "Fear cannot raise a child," she said. "Only truth can." That moment transcended courtroom television. It became a masterclass in the concept of justice in jurisprudence, where ethics and empathy intersect. Her influence extends